All right, so we're going back to the Tanya, taking a little bit of a break from the Tehillim, from Psalms, and we're going to cover the second part of the Tanya. There's several sections, as I mentioned earlier, and the reason I chose to do the second section now is because it is a little bit easier to follow than the first. And there are some opinions that say that he intended the second section to be studied before the first one. And you will see why, because it deals with the actual foundation of our faith. How one comes to love and fear of Hashem. The whole book, in reality, helps us focus. Focus on life's purpose. Life has meaning. But the human being consists of a soul and of an animal spirit, a physical body. And it is a continuous struggle that makes it difficult for him to realize what should be his priority, what should be the goal in life. Man is very much distracted by the evil inclination. The Jewish people are fortunate that we have a guide called the Torah. But even with this guide, it is not easy. Very, very difficult, very, very challenging to be able to follow through every day of our life without falling, without losing resolve, without becoming weak and tired and dispirited. It happens to just about everyone. But as we will see in the introduction to the second part, he mentions a very famous pasuk that even if a tzaddik, a righteous man, falls 7 times, he rises, he gets back up. There was once an individual who came complaining to the rabbi, I can't win the battle with the Yetzer Hara, with the evil. He's very, very strong. He always beats me. He always defeats me. And the rabbi asked him, tell me, do you ever defeat him? And he thought about it. He says, yeah, once in a while I win. Well, good. As long as you win once in a while, you'll be okay. If you never win, that's not a good sign. And we must realize that that's the job, that's the function of the Yetzer Hara, of the evil inclination, is to make it hard for us. But it will never be harder than what we can handle. That's an important idea, to continuously remember that, no matter how challenging our life may be, regardless of the circumstances, regardless of whatever it is. And everyone has his own unique, customized challenges. It was meant for him, and he was given the tools to overcome any difficulties. So one should never despair. He will always receive assistance from above, as long as he makes a decision to fight. The reason why we want to fight is not because we just want to win a battle. This is not just about winning battles. It is about forming a relationship with Hashem, forming a relationship with God, which enable us to focus on exactly what it is that we need to accomplish. And the way one connects to Hashem is through the fear and the love of God. The fear, meaning to desist, that which helps us stay away from sin, from transgression. And the love, that which helps us comply with His will, observe His commandments. And as we will see, there is a point that is emphasized in this introduction. Today we're just covering the introduction to that second portion. And that is, there's something that gives an impetus to action, and there's also something that we call a foundation on which one can fall back and get support. Because impetus is necessary to move ahead, to advance, to progress, to become a better person. We need to go from step to step. It's gradual. Just like the little child matures with age, he becomes more knowledgeable, more settled. And the same thing is with that which is spirituality. In the spiritual realm, we want to become closer to God. We want to be better people. We want to observe the mitzvot with happiness, not treat it as though it is a burden. We want to do things the proper way, the best way possible. So this is gradual. This takes a certain amount of intelligence, clarity, and consistency, working on it. But sometimes a person may fall. He may lose it. So we need to fall back on something that will support us, that will not make us fall completely. So that's called yesodot, foundations. Whereas the mekorot, the root or the source of the impetus, of the drive that we get, that is what propels us and allows us to advance further in life. As he points out, and there are many concepts that will sound familiar to you, that Adam nikra mehalech, the human being is called mehalech, he walks. He's not omed, he's not standing like the angels. Man has great potential to grow. He's not static. He can actually grow. He can, God forbid, also regress. He can become worse than an animal. But as all of you know, there have been human beings that have grown and have become like angels in a body, in a physical body. So this is all possible. What is necessary, however, is not just to make a decision. It is a certain clarity that comes with time, with maturity, but also with the proper foundation. So this is an important point that I'm letting you know now, because he's going to talk about that. Why is that foundation so important for a child? What difference will it make? So here, we're going to be talking about Sha'ar Hayichud v'Ha'emunah. Sha'ar Hayichud v'Ha'emunah are the gates to faith, to the unity of God and to faith. The reason why this is important is because this deals with something which is very fundamental for us Jews, and that is, that we say several times every day, the Shema Yisrael. The Shema Yisrael, where we accept upon ourselves the yoke of heaven by attesting that God is one. And after that we add, Baruch Shem Kevod Malchuto L'Olam Vayed, that His name be sanctified forever. This is a very, very important statement, but not everyone understands properly what this is. The Zohar goes into it a little bit more. What exactly is being said in the first statement and in the second statement? And it has to do with the unity of God. And the reason why the unity of God is important is not just that everything in the world is annulled before Him. In other words, everything is one with Him. Not only because of that. The emphasis of these chapters is to impress upon us how emunah, faith, is really the foundation of everything. Without faith, there's no reason why one should want to become a better person, as I've explained in the past. Where is the motivating factor here? If there's no faith, there's no faith. But once he believes and he understands what is being expected of him, and he delves deeper into that faith, what does that faith mean? What does God mean to me? All of this helps him. And what are we going to call all of this thinking? We're going to call this itbunenut, or meditation, which he says many, many times is really fundamental in enabling one to grow. Meditation. Meditating about the greatness of God, the love of God, the unity of God. So since this is important, the faith, that we understand properly what exactly faith is, he's going to tell us that this is important, that it start early on, as I will explain soon. However, it is also important to keep in mind that when we talk about faith, we're talking about something that we don't fully understand. Because that which we fully understand, that it makes sense to us, whether it's logical, common sense, or whatever, that's not called faith. That is something that we can understand on our own. And we are told to understand as much as our mind enables us to understand, to figure things out with our mind. But that which we do not understand, beyond that point where there's no human comprehension, that's where faith begins. So we need to recognize the fact that there's a boundary between that which we are capable of knowing and that which we're not capable of knowing. And when we are prepared to say that, we admit it, that there are certain things that the mind cannot comprehend, that's a good sign. That's part of the emunah. That not only do I believe that there are certain things I don't know. And there's a lot of things we don't know. So the beginning of this section is called Chinuch Katan, the education of a child. And the reason for that is because he begins with the pasuk, Chanoch lanar al pi darko gam ki yaskin lo yasur mimenu. Educate a child according to his way, for when he will get older, he will not depart from it. I think those words are understood very easily, right? Mm-hmm. Educate him along his way, and when he grows older, he will not depart from it. Meaning that, the literal meaning, according to his pace, according to his abilities, but educate him, and you will see that it will serve him. It will really help him. Education is something that the Jewish people very much value. It says, al pi darko, according to his way. But what does according to his way mean? So I told you according to his pace, according to his abilities. But the other interpretation, which is really the one that he focuses on, is according to his particular way. This child has a particular way, a certain type of behavior, a certain type of inclination, a certain type of interest perhaps. And that may not be good, because we're talking about a child. Since when do we want to educate a child al pi darko, according to his way, his own particular way, even if it's not so good? And the bigger question is, what kind of a benefit is that? Is if we do so, that when he gets older, lo yasur mimenu, he will not depart from it. On the contrary, if we're talking about an immature way that this child may demonstrate, then we would hope that when he matures, he does depart from it. You understand the question? That's what he talks about here. So when Shlomo Melech in Mishlei, in Proverbs, is telling us, educate the child early on, that makes sense, but al pi darko, according to his way, the way he wants it, according to the second interpretation, in other words, the way the child is, the way he behaves, the way he wants it, that's not good. So what exactly is he saying? So obviously, we're not saying that the child should just do anything he wants. We don't just give him the liberty to behave the way he does. So there's some deeper meaning over here that has to do with the foundation that we're giving the child that will help him when he becomes older. It's important to always remember that every human being has great potential. A child, even though all he is a child, if he is directed properly, given the best guidance, he has a better chance. It is not a guarantee. Some of the best families have had kids who, as we say in Hebrew, went off the derech. They got carried away, they're not as observant. And then you have the other way around too. Families that are totally not religious, where a child came out very, very special and brought about a revolution to his own family. Kids who have brought back their parents, you see everything. It just comes to show you the power of the soul. It's the soul that's so special, or the soul that is so much struggling, even though he has good parents. And we're not going to get into the why such good parents had a child like that. That's not the topic of tonight. But it can happen. So there's no guarantee, but it's definitely going to help. In most cases it does help. Good schooling, good friends, good teachers, a good upbringing, a healthy upbringing in one's home. And after all, what are we trying to accomplish? We're trying to accomplish that the faith that we have, that we received from our forefathers, should be transmitted properly to the next generation. And if we are cool about it, then we cannot expect that the next generation naturally should be any stronger. If anything, it's going to cool off more and more and more. You know, a book, if you don't edit it, and you know about books, you're going to find a mistake or more. There's many mistakes. And that edition eventually is going to be published again. There are going to be more mistakes because the first ones were not caught. Imagine no mistakes are ever corrected. Eventually there are many, many mistakes. You got to catch the mistakes right away. You cannot afford that the message that you want to give over should have mistakes. We're not just talking about spelling mistakes, real big mistakes. And that's the responsibility of parents and teachers, to make sure that the children get the best education they can. So the child's development is gradual. Even though it's gradual, the education that he receives early on will be definitely a sort of stepping stone, a keresh kvitza, a springboard, which will help him greatly achieve his goal, his full potential. Even though achieving one's potential is definitely a product, somewhat of a product of one's mazal. Mazal means one's fate and destiny. That's true. But that fate and destiny can take the child in a completely different direction had he received proper guidance. Take Albert Einstein, for example. He was a genius. And by the way, in school he didn't do too well when he was a younger child. But sometimes people wake up later in life. The flower blossoms later on. But imagine if this genius was a religious Jew. You think he would have stayed in the same field? He would have pursued the same interests? Nothing wrong with what he pursued. On the contrary, he excelled more or less in his field, even though he made mistakes as well. And he was a brilliant man, recognized as such in the scientific world. But had he been a religious Jew, then his energy, his efforts would have been directed in a completely different direction. He would have invested more of his time and effort on hopefully making a connection with Hashem, studying the Torah. After all, he was Jewish. He didn't take the time to think about life, even though he did think. He was a thinker, a deep thinker too. And he did reach certain conclusions that were pretty strong about religion. Even though he was not religious, he did recognize that there's some power out there. Still, he was not very much focused, because to be able to gain more clarity about God and to have a relationship with Him, you have to spend time. In other words, if you want to have a relationship with someone, you want to become a good friend with someone, doesn't it take effort and time for you to demonstrate, to prove that you care about someone? That's what it is, effort and time. How could you build a relationship with him if you don't immerse yourself and try your best to make that relationship? Either because you're unaware of it, you don't think it's that important, or you have other things that are occupying your mind. And that's what happens with a lot of people, even if they're somewhat religious. They just don't take the time. And they don't realize that the more they would meditate on this, even a few minutes a day, think about it, it would help them. At the very least, it would preserve their fear and love for Hashem. And if they're fortunate, that fear and love would take them to a higher step in that connection with God. There are very various levels of people who are becoming very, very righteous, because they just didn't take it for granted, even though they knew the truth. They had emunah, they had the faith, but they wanted more. They realized that there's so much more to gain, which is what he talks about over here. What is it that people do to get closer to Hashem on a higher level? It's progressive. Okay, it's progressive, but it doesn't happen by itself like maturity does somewhat happen by itself. You grow up to 6'8" or 7'5" or whatever it is, just by eating cereal and milk every day in the morning. You'll automatically grow if it's in the genes. And then there's another way you grow, in the stomach. It's not too difficult. But what about the mind? Well, the mind, you have to apply yourself, you have to study and to acquire the knowledge. Same thing with spirituality, which is even more difficult. It takes hard work. And as we will see, the hard work is where? It is where the soul finally is able to dominate the body. For those who were following the first section of the Tanya, that's pretty much what he's been talking about. A lot of discussion about the nature of the soul. What is the soul all about? What kind of a soul? Different kinds of souls. What is exactly going on between them? That was in the first section. Now the focus is more on the unity of God, that the faith that we're supposed to have with Him, because that is the very, very first step, which is why I said earlier, some say that he intended to write this as the first section of the Tanya, since this discusses the fundamentals. So, in answer to our question before, what exactly is therefore the benefit of giving this foundation to the child? In what way will this help him later on, that he will not depart from it? So he begins to say like this. We know that the root of Avodat Hashem, the service of Hashem, consists of love and fear. As the Pasuk says, Sur Mera V'aseh Tov, in describing the service of God, the verse says, stay away from that which is evil and do good. Well, it simplifies it for us, that all we've got to do is stay away from that which is wrong, which includes all the negative commandments, and aseh tov, and do that which is positive, which means make an effort to observe the positive commandments, right? So you have the need to be strong, to resist the urge to do that which is wrong, negative, and we need also to be motivated enough to do that which is expected of us, that which is positive, the mitzvot aseh, the positive commandments. So, yir'ah and ahava, fear and love, that is where they come in. Yir'ah is necessary for sur mirah, to stay away from that which is wrong. Ahava, love, is necessary in order to trigger in us the desire, the continuous interest of doing the will of Hashem, not stopping, giving up, that's it. I want to retire. There's no retirement from this. So you need love. You need the love for Hashem to want to continue to do this, even if it's difficult. A lot of people don't realize to be Jewish, to be observant, doesn't mean only when things are easy, when you're making tons of money. Even when it's tough, when you don't have a penny to your name, when you're being tortured, and you're being pretty much asked to give your life, that is when you see if someone loves God or not. As they say in English and in other languages, how do you know who's a true friend? In times of need, we know who our true friends are indeed. In times of need, that's when true friends prove it to each other. So, Yir'ah ve'ahava are both necessary, the love and the fear of Hashem, in order to be able to maintain that strong relationship regardless of the difficulties. This mitzvah of educating a child is incumbent upon a father, as it's brought down in the Shulchan Aruch. If a father notices a child, even though he's under bar mitzvah, wanting to eat something which is not kosher, wanting to do something which is wrong, he has to try to stop him. Even though the child is not responsible yet, he's not as accountable yet, he's under the age of bar mitzvah. Part of education is for a father to get involved in stopping, in holding back, and definitely not encouraging, oh, it's okay for you to do it. You're not bar mitzvah yet. No, it's against the halakha to do that. We don't want to teach him, for you it's okay, but once you become a big boy, no. It begins as early as possible. As soon as the child understands right from wrong, we have to basically point it out to him. Even though we don't expect of him everything, he's under bar mitzvah. Still, that's part of the father's responsibility. But if that's the importance of love and fear, whether it's in a child or an adult, why does the Torah say la'asotam? When it comes to the mitzvah of ahava, the love of Hashem, as the pasuk, the verse says, "Asher anochi mitzaveh etchem la'asot le'ahava et Hashem." If we're talking about love, how could you say to do? What does doing have to do with love? Love is a feeling that we express. It's a sentiment. So what does action have to do with love? We act to do mitzvot, but how does it fit in with the mitzvah of loving Hashem? It says, la'asot, le'ahava et Hashem. And this is really the gist of the introduction. He describes to us two types of love. And a lot of it, perhaps, will sound familiar from the past. There is a love which is intrinsic to the soul. Even though it's intrinsic, it's natural, because the soul is a chelek Eloka Mimal, is a part of God. It is not always revealed. It's there. It's hidden. It's part of the soul. It's natural. What will it take for it to be revealed? Basically, if we want to say it in a nutshell, once the soul is able to dominate the physical body. And how does it do that? Al yedei zikuch, when it is able to refine, to purify the body. The body has bodily needs. And those bodily needs, the physical needs, they're not always compatible with the will of Hashem. So if one is a slave to the bodily needs, vice and the like, then he's in trouble. Because who's controlling him? The physical body, the evil inclination. He's not a master, he's a slave. And a lot of people are slaves. Very few people are complete masters of their physical body. Complete control. So much control that they don't even struggle anymore, as we said before in the first section of the Tanya. It comes natural for them to do the right thing. They don't even have the craving to do that which is wrong. Because you have the middleman, the average individual, does the right thing, but he has cravings. He holds himself back. And this could be whether he holds himself back from saying something slanderous, he holds himself back from eating too much, he holds himself back from getting angry, but he's still getting angry. Imagine somebody, it doesn't even bother him. Somebody just embarrassed him, offended him. He makes nothing of it. That is a much higher ma'ala. That's a much higher level. How did it come to that? He worked on himself. He worked on himself until he reached that level where he's in complete control. He realizes what's important in life, what's not important. He realizes this is perhaps a challenge or a test. Regardless, he understands that this is not something to get so upset about. But it's not easy. It takes a lot of work. So you have the first type of love that very much yearns to be close to God. It yearns. It's not revealed yet. It will become revealed, slowly but surely. Once the neshama, the soul, humbles the animal spirit. Because once that animal spirit is humbled by the soul, all of a sudden there's excitement. All of a sudden the soul feels on fire. It wants to do the will of Hashem in an excited way. There's all kinds of people out there who want to do the will of Hashem, but not everyone is excited. That beautiful excitement and happiness to do the will of Hashem is rare. Some may perhaps fake it, some perhaps attempt it, but it's not coming naturally. Because for it to be natural, they've had to reach already a high level of refinement, where their soul is no longer subjected to the temptations of the physical spirit, of the physical body. The ones who reach this level are called tzaddikim. They're the righteous ones. Kabbalah explains that those that want to reach this level need a higher level neshama. This is not something that you reach just with the plain ruach and the nefesh, which are the spirit, the animal spirit, which are more emotive in the way they do things, or do things as a result of having a need to fulfill an obligation. That's the ruach and the nefesh work differently than the neshama. What motivates the neshama to do something is different than the ruach and the nefesh. So one needs a higher level neshama, plus learning Torah and performing a lot of ma'asim tovim, good deeds, all along with the efforts, the continuous efforts that he's making to grow in order to achieve that type of love that is there naturally, but it's not revealed. In other words, it can become revealed, but it takes work. All right, so that was the first love. What about the second love? Second love is something that everyone pretty much can arrive at, as long as he meditates and he thinks. Now, thinking is something that a lot of people are not doing too much these days. That's a shame, but we need to think. We think hopefully about an investment that we're about to make. Hopefully, there are some people that don't even think about investments. They're very impulsive and rash, and they love taking risks. Remember the days of junk bonds? Yeah, they didn't put too much thought to it. Easy money. You need to think, especially about a relationship with Hashem. After all, He makes certain demands of you. And you want to ask yourself, why should I do it? Not only because my father told me so. You want to understand on your own. It's very, very important, because if one just does it because others are telling him, there's always that danger that he will stop doing it. But when he has a limited understanding of why he does certain things, whatever the mind can comprehend, then he needs to comprehend. As the Rambam points out, Maimonides in the very beginning of his major work, Yad HaChazakah, that the emunah of Hashem is leida sheyesh matzul, that we know that there is a creator, not that we believe. We need to know it for a fact, that this thing makes sense to us. And that's what this love is all about, this first, or I should say the second category of love, which is accessible to everyone, but requires a certain amount of thinking. Who is this God? You know that I'm a part of this God? He created me. He sustains me. He sustains the entire world. If He would remove Himself for 1 second, the world would cease to exist. And this God, wow, He loves us. And the way He loves us, we should love Him. And that is the meaning of the pasuk, Kamayim apanim lapanim ken lev adam ladam. Solomon says a beautiful verse, very valuable lesson in life. You want to know if somebody likes you? Ask yourself, do you like him? Because the hearts are a mirror image of each other. In the same way you see your reflection when you look at the water, you see your reflection, the same is with the hearts. One heart is a reflection of the other, as long as they know each other for a little while. We're not talking about love at first sight. People think they love. Then they're disappointed. After a while they realize that, it's a reflection. And the more we absorb this fact that Hashem loves us, and He does so much for us, this will hopefully get us to love Him. And this is on a low level. This is the second type of love that everyone is capable of, as long as he thinks. And what did this Hashem do? We just read on Pesach in the Haggadah. Many, many times we were thanking and praising God that He took us out from Egypt. Imagine, this God came down to such a low place called Egypt that was full of impurity, and took us out and elevated us. For what purpose? Because He wants us to be His nation, His people. He wants to give us the Torah. Look how good He was to us. And there was no better caterer than Him for 40 years. For 40 years, you know anybody that would be able to cater for so many people in the desert? For 40 years, He was a caterer. Man came down from Shamayim in heaven. We had the slab, we had the water, we had the meat, everything you want. And the weather was perfect, right? Everything was air conditioned. No snake bites, no scorpion bites in the desert. Everything was just right. As long as they behaved themselves, of course. When they didn't behave themselves, things got tough. To remind them. To take so many millions of people out of Egypt, bring into Eretz Yisrael, is no easy task. Only He can do that. So we talk about that in the Haggadah Shel Pesach. When we left not just to leave bondage, we left with the idea of receiving the Torah, to be His people. We were excited at the time, and that is something that Hashem remembers I remember your excitement for me. When you went after me in a land that is not sown, in a desert. And I was always telling people in many of my derashot, the speeches that I've given about the topic of the redemption, that God knows very well the many times in history that we've demonstrated our love for Him. And now it's His turn. He's going to demonstrate His love for us when He brings the final Geulah. Because we've done it many times. Maybe not enough, but quite a bit. Unfortunately, we've had our ups and downs too. That is why we had the first temple destroyed, the second temple destroyed. But there's no doubt about it that His providence over us, His hashgacha, continues to be with us. The many miracles. So when one thinks about this, it's supposed to trigger in him a love for Hashem, the love of the second type. That is very easy. Take somebody from the Holocaust who survived, who saw miracles, and you may get someone who might ask you, where was God? I'm very upset. You can't blame them, because unfortunately he may have seen his entire family killed in front of his eyes. Where was God? But look at yourself. You were saved. You're a living miracle. And I'm sure you can tell us the miracles you had. Right? Yeah, I did have some miracles. What is the source of these miracles? Didn't you think about that? Why are you upset? Obviously, we can't blame them completely because of what they went through, but they don't think enough. They don't realize that history is full of miracles. Not everyone made it. Okay, that requires several lectures to explain why certain things happen to certain people, why the young die before their time, why the righteous suffer. And I have lectures about all these topics. It's not possible to cover them on one foot, standing on one foot. Some people expect to know everything. Just now, tell me everything. You can't. It's like God told Iyov. The book of Job is a very interesting book for those who have a hard time understanding why God does certain things. Hashem tells Iyov, tell me, you have questions? Where were you when I created the world? Did you see my blueprint? Do you know what my plans are? Why are you're asking all these questions? Man does not live long enough to be able to figure things out. Even if he has tons of midrashim and Zohar and Kabbalah and Torah to revert to. He can go back and study and try to find some explanation, but still he will not have all the answers. Thinking. A Jew needs to think, and even a non-Jew. Ponder a little bit about the creation, because this is the first step towards emunah. Thinking about God. Why exactly did He create the world? I may not have all the answers. The one who's thinking is saying to himself, but I know that I need to do my best with my mind that God gave me to try to comprehend however much I am capable of comprehending. And whatever I cannot comprehend, I need faith for that. Some people make fun of that. Faith? What's faith? Can you prove it? You can't prove everything. There's a lot we can know. We have testimony. Isn't that worth something? But there's some things that we don't know for sure we believe. One of those is Tchiyat HaMetim, that the dead will rise. Do we know it? No. We believe it. There's many things that we believe because we haven't seen it. We're told it will happen. But there are certain things that we definitely know for a fact, and that's important for us to strengthen that knowledge that we have in those things that are facts, because they're going to help us with our emunah. They're going to help us with the ahava, with the love for Hashem. As long as we think about it and we talk about it. So there are many ways that a Jew can begin to think about Hashem. He can also begin to think in a very particular way, he says, in the greatness of Hashem. In other words, it doesn't just have to be about the history. You can think about one specific area that he wants to meditate on, to contemplate on, and realize the greatness of Hashem from that one detail that he chooses to think about. Anyway, so this love is the second type of love, which is possible for everyone as long as he takes the time to think about it. And he goes on to explain that this is the love that Moshe wanted to implant in every single Jew. As we see various Pesukim, that this is what is expected of us, to love Hashem. Hashem only chose us, our forefathers. He took you out of Egypt. All kinds of expressions that Moshe uses to remind us, to remind that generation, don't forget. This is what God has done for you and for your forefathers. Therefore, Moshe concluded his explanation about the importance of loving Hashem with the words la'asotam. What's la'asotam? To do them, which is a love that is made in the heart. In other words, it's something that we need to awaken. It's something that through our actions and through our thinking we can produce it. How? By binah, by dat, using our faculties, our mental faculties that awaken this love. This is not the love that comes about gradually, that I mentioned the first one. That one takes work, and that one will happen automatically. All of a sudden, he will feel a tremendous fire. This is a love that is dependent on la'asotam, to do. In other words, there's something that we can do with our mind to awaken it. Therefore, he says, he mentions the verse, "Vayu ha'devarim ha'ele shanochim b'tzadecha hayom al levavecha." What does that mean? These words should be on your heart. The Torah is telling us about the importance of loving Hashem. Okay. But if to bring about that love, I need to meditate. Where is the instructions to meditate? So he explains that is why it follows. These words have to be constantly on your heart. Because these words, by thinking about them, by talking about them, this is what will lead to Ahavat Hashem. So you understand? The meditating is also pretty much indicated in the Torah as well. So on this type of love, you can give instructions. You can put forth a commandment. Love Hashem. You can't do that on the first one. The first one, the higher one, that will come. It will come by itself. When a Jew takes certain actions to purify himself, you can't command him to do it. It will come. Not only will it come, the Kabbalah explains that that type of a love, the first one, is like a gift. It's such a precious gift that the tzaddikim receive that Hashem wants them to taste a certain closeness to Him while they're alive in this world. It's a little bit of that feeling that they will have in the world to come, in the afterlife, that they are able to sense in this world. You know, some people do all kinds of things to get high. Is that what it's called in English? All kinds of means. But they are artificial. And they're only momentarily. I don't want to say that this is a high, but imagine that this is such a beautiful, ecstatic feeling that does not come about through artificial means. It is real. It's real. But does it last? Soon we will see. That's the last point that he talks about. How even people who have gotten to high levels can sometimes fall back. But their fall is not the same kind of a fall of somebody that just fell down completely. Chas v'shalom. Which happens too. It's a different kind of fall. But getting back to what we were saying, the second type of love, it is possible and it is correct to say, to command, love Hashem. How? By meditating, by thinking about Him. Read the history books. Read stories of tzaddikim. Read about miracles that happened. There are many, many written miracles that have been documented. You know what they do? Imagine somebody that had doubts about the afterlife. And they just had somebody that was very, very dear to them pass away young. And I'm telling you, I read many such stories, Jews and non-Jews. And they were crying and begging for that person to come in a dream or something to give them a sign that they're okay, that they're still around. And many of them got a sign. All of a sudden, a little bird came and stayed by the window for a while. All of a sudden, out of nowhere, they received some sign from their father through a messenger or something, all kinds of stories. I even read about a story where someone received a piece of mail from the long deceased father that was sent 25 years ago. The mailman lost it.
Oh my God.
It was in the house of the mailman, sitting there for 25 years. All of a sudden, one day, he's cleaning up. Maybe he's cleaning for Passover. I don't know. Spring cleaning. Oh, I never delivered this piece of mail. Why now? Because that person begged for a sign. You see what I mean? These kind of stories. Many such stories. So you know what it does to that person who had doubts? It gives them a little bit of a push. It definitely makes them happy, calms them down. So that's what we're talking about here. We need to do something. There's a tzivui, therefore, on the second type of love, to love Hashem through hitbonenut, through meditating, by thinking about what He does for us. Thank Him for all that He's done for you. There's a lot of people who are worse off than you. Be grateful. He's been kind to you, not the way you think, that He's been so cruel. God forbid, He's not cruel. Think about all the good things. It takes thought. All right, so now that we understand the two levels of love, we're going back to one of the first questions. Why do we need, as a foundation, that the child receive a foundation, some sort of foundation of love? In other words, when we're talking about educating a child, giving him some sort of foundation, and we said, remember what we said? Al pi darko, according to his way. Where is that benefit? Why is there a need to give it to him there? And somehow that will be a benefit to him later. So in explaining that question that we started off with, he mentions the verse, Sheva yipol tzaddik vakam. That it happens that sometimes a tzaddik, a righteous man, may fall 7 times, but he gets up. Yes, there are people that fall. But at the very least, he gets up. Now, we're not talking about somebody that fell and doesn't despair. He gets up, everything will be okay. Here we're talking about a spiritual fall. He made a mistake. He committed a wrong. But he did teshuvah, he repented. A tzaddik can sometimes fall 7 times and get up again. He's a tzaddik, so he will get up. But this is not so much about sin. It's about a spiritual fall. It means that a tzaddik can sometimes be on a very, very high level, and somehow he stepped back. What exactly is happening? Because with what we asked earlier, this will make a lot more sense. What we asked before, that it is important that the child be given some foundation, because that will be for him a benefit. That these two are related. And this is how he explains it. An Adam, a human being, is called a mehalech, as we said before. He's continuously walking, which means he's continuously advancing. He's not omed. A tzaddik, especially as he's growing from one level to another, in order for him to go from one step to another, he needs to fall back. Fall back, not in the sense that he falls back or down or lower than an average individual. He's always going to be ahead of the average person. Fall back meaning that he basically removes or gets rid of the lower level that he's been on, and he supplants it with a higher level. And as he's doing that, the transition from the lower to the higher makes him fall down. In what way does he fall down to go up, to go back up? He falls down to the old level of ahava that he had. In other words, even though he's steadily mehalech, he's steadily growing, but in order to achieve the higher step, he's coming down and depending or leaning on the regular love that he's had early on, from the very beginning when he was a young boy, the love of meditation, the love that comes about through meditation and thinking. In other words, he can always fall back on that. He has not fallen completely. He has a backup. Perhaps we should call it a backup. Here we're talking about a high love, a high form of love, and he's reaching to the greatest heights of all. But he's falling back. But he's not falling, exactly. He's falling back on a support, a love that will support him on his way up. And that is the simple type of love that he's had from early on in his life. So that is why it says, Gam ki yaskin lo yasur mimeno, even when he grows old. Not when he becomes older. It just means as he's getting older, it will never depart from him. He always has what to fall back. Imagine somebody that has a checking account that sometimes, is empty, but he has a big savings account he can rely on. So as he's growing, he's falling back, not falling back like a regular person would fall. He's always going to be high, but he's falling back in order to be able to go up more. And during that transition, he's not falling completely. He's getting up because he has the support. He has the other level of love that came about through meditation. That's always ingrained in him. That's always there with him. From the very beginning, in his early years, it was there. Just to finish up, we'll be talking about that which awakens love and fear in a human being, and how they are fundamental in making that connection with Hashem. Faith can be a faith that is pure or not so pure. A faith that is pure, no questions asked whatsoever, is one that is relying on a certain understanding of the unity of Hashem. And as we will see in the next chapter, there's a difference between Yehuda Ila'ah and Yehuda Tata'ah. The unity of Hashem in the higher worlds and the unity of Hashem in the lower worlds, which is the difference between the statement of Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad and Baruch Shem Kivon Malchut Olam Habayit. So the Zohar explains what exactly is the difference between the two of them. For now, what he's done is, in his introduction, impress upon us that there are certain things that need to be awakened in an individual, the earlier on the better, in order to be able to make that connection a strong connection. In order to bring about a yirah and ahava, in order to bring about a love that is really intrinsic, and in some ways natural for an individual to have, but needs to be revealed. It all falls down, or all comes down to, I should say, to having emunah tehorah. And that emunah tehorah, that pure faith, begins in its early steps through hitbonenut, through meditating. So, to simplify it all, you want to come to love and fear of Hashem, step number one is make sure that emunah is tehorah, it's pure. How do I do that? By constantly meditating, by constantly thinking about it, by taking the time to develop and to nourish that relationship with Hashem. It takes effort. Without effort at all, it's not going to happen. Yirah and ahava is something so special. People have it in different levels, but to have it strong and to develop it to a higher level, which is possible even though it takes a lot of work, requires at the very least itbonenut, to think about it and to meditate about it. And people sometimes come to tears when they think about it, what just happened with them, what they just experienced, a miracle. And those tears are real. That's coming from the soul. All of a sudden they break up. They become very emotional about it. You know how people sometimes cry out of happiness?
Yeah.
There's also crying because there's smoke in the air. There's also crocodile tears. There's all kinds of tears. But then there's tears of joy, tears of excitement, for something good that has happened. That's the type of expression of feelings that people may get to when they feel that fervor, that excitement in the neshama, wanting to pray to Hashem and to thank Hashem. In the days of the Bet HaMikdash, we used to bring sacrifices to give thanksgiving to Hashem. Today we don't have sacrifices, but we still have Tehillim, words of praise, blessings. There's a special blessing that we say at Gomel. Hashem was kind to me that came out of the hospital. Hashem was kind to me that got out of this some predicament. And there's a bigger blessing. Shasali nes b'makom hazeh. If somebody had a big miracle, every time he goes by that spot, he makes that blessing. All of this, as we've been explaining before in Tehillim, if it's said with kavanah, with being focused on it, it's much more powerful. Otherwise, people just rush through it and they don't even realize what they're saying. It's a shame, because all that kavanah really helps in growth. And the more a Jew applies himself and makes an effort, when it's hard, he makes an effort. He wakes up early, he prays, he does it even though it's not comfortable for him. All of that adds up. It all builds him. And as I was saying before, the goal is to purify ourselves. How are we going to purify ourselves? How are we going to make the neshama the master? Unless we purify that physical body. And that takes work, that takes getting up early, that takes doing things even though it's challenging. And the more we do it, the more we become convinced about the importance of it. And eventually, that love for Hashem, that higher love, is gifted to us. We all of a sudden feel a closer relationship. God willing, we should come a little bit close to that. It's not easy. But even a little bit, to sense what that love is, it's a beautiful feeling. And that is something that we need to pray that Hashem should help us. But you can't just pray and not do anything. Hashem, let me have that love now. I don't give it for free. You have to work for it. Sure, like anything else, you have to work for it. Tzaddikim have worked for it. And that is why they reach such great levels of Ruach HaKodesh, which is like prophecy, because of their purity. Anyway, Kabbalah, Chasidut, and what the Tanya does is share with us a little bit about what the human potential really is in the spiritual realm.